My name is Rich Ling, and I'm the Shaw Foundation Professor of Media Technology. I think some of the things that couples need to be aware of when they're talking with one another, when they're communicating with one another, is being present, is being there for one another, and taking the time to engage one another regardless of how they, what form of mediation they happen to be using. And this can become difficult because there's so many different forms of mediation, so many different channels that are available, that it might be difficult for them to prioritize one another when there's so many different messages coming, different ways of communicating, and so on. In addition, I think that there's a real need to be aware of the characteristics of the different channels, so that if they need to answer, for example, one-to-one, or if they answer to a question that has many different people associated with it, they have to be careful that they're not speaking the wrong way to the wrong audience. I think that verbal aggression, especially, for example, over the telephone or something like that, it's actually, of all the telephone conversations that you have, it's not that, there are not that many that are aggressive for most people. Obviously, in some situations, people can be quite aggressive with a particular person, or a person who's particularly mad or angry or something like that might make a habit of it, and that's obviously not a good thing. Part of the issue associated with this is something you might call it like road rage. In other words, I'm in an enclosed space, I don't have to take responsibility for my actions, and so I can just act out. I can just get angry. So that becomes a problematic issue, and that I think people need to be aware of. Another thing, obviously, there's the whole issue of cyberbullying, where one person bullies another, or maybe a whole group of people bully a particular person. And that's obviously a type of aggression that is very unfortunate, that we need to take very seriously. It can give you sore feelings, it can sour a relationship, it can make it difficult to resolve types of issues. That's when you're thinking about people who are sort of equal in the interaction, if they're at the same level of power. However, if you're thinking about people who are at different levels of power, for example, a parent and a child, an employer and an employee, a teacher and a student, if there's an aggression there, especially when the more powerful person is being aggressive, that brings up a whole other set of issues that are perhaps more difficult to deal with because they're, in a sense, playing on their power position, and that might make the aggressive episode more unfortunate for the person who's having to receive that. Well, you know, obviously physical aggression has very direct, very acute problems. If I hit somebody and that breaks their arm or something like that, that's, you know, a very, very immediate problem that needs to be dealt with right then and there. With psychological aggression, it's more insidious. It takes more time for it to build up. The working of it is perhaps not as acute, but that doesn't mean that it's not as serious. The other thing about physical aggression is it, you know, there can be some sort of a direct, immediate consequence, and so that's probably one of the reasons that does receive more attention as opposed to physical abuse. And the other thing is that nonverbal aggression, you know, there's no evidence of it, basically, unless, you know, there's a recording or a text or something like that. But it's more ephemeral. So those are probably some of the reasons that we hear a lot more about physical aggression than we would about non-physical aggression. I think maybe counting to 10. Just sort of taking a minute and think about put yourself in the position of the person with whom you're talking, and see whether or not it's really, you really need to sort of escalate things. Relax, and I think just sort of try and take their position.